Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kaylee. I use this channel to talk all about what intentional living looks like for me and the various aspects of my life that feel the most aligned with my intentional life. Today that means reflecting on June spending and budgeting and going ahead and budgeting for the month of July. It's kind of crazy because I'm actually going to film these back to back. Typically I film the budgeting for the upcoming month days in advance, and then on the last day or on the first day of the next month I film the reflections and update on spending in the current month or the previous month. But today happens to be June 30th and I am going to film the whole thing at the same time. So the structure might not be exactly the same just because I'm used to filming this in a very different way, but I am going to do the best that I can. And I just want to go ahead and jump into it because I'm actually so excited to reflect on the month of June, which may sound crazy or may sound completely foreign based on how I feel coming out of other months and most of the videos that I filmed up to this point from a budgeting perspective. But I'm very excited to reflect on June, talk about June, because I'm so proud of us and our spending. And I'm kind of shocked to see the amount of income that we made to our expenses because I expected it to be very different than it was. And I am pleasantly surprised with how it turned out. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the month of June, how I felt, what happened, and kind of where we ended up in our finances specifically. So this month was kind of crazy. I'm actually going to pull up a calendar because I feel like this month has lasted forever in some really great ways and some not really great ways. Wow, yeah, we had a really busy month. We had a really busy last 2 months, May and June. June's busyness was a little bit more unexpected. We were watching my sister for nearly a week. We went to the beach for a week. While we were at the beach, a family member of my husband's passed away, and we had to book last minute travel for a funeral. So we were home for 4 days after the beach and then immediately got on a plane and flew to Michigan. We were there for 3 days. We got home on Saturday the 28th. Yesterday was just kind of a chill and reset day. And today we are on a Monday and the last day of June. We've also been filming a lot. Before we went to Michigan, I had a couple of video ideas and I just tried to kind of hammer them out in the days that we were home. We also obviously have like a backlog of prepping for the beach, and the beach vlog, I say that because it's going to be very short. We did not get a lot of footage because we were focused on being on the beach. So there's also a lot going on that we have been really excited about content wise, and now we have videos for like the next 2 or 3 months, and then also videos like this that happen every month, or my quarterly update which happens at the end of every quarter, which is coming up, that I'm also filming in between those that are now kind of backlogged, which feels good and kind of exciting because I hit a lull there for a minute in what I wanted to put out. So I'm excited to have some things locked and loaded and ready to go for the upcoming months, as well as these monthly continuation videos that revolve around the time of year or the month. It has been insanely hot though. We've had a heat index of like over 105 for 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Today, I went outside to walk the dog and it was like 81 degrees and it almost felt cool compared to what it has been feeling like. So I am a little over summer. I'm over feeling sticky and wet because of how humid it is and sweaty. I just want a sweater instead of being sweaty. I'm ready for fall. I'm ready for winter, but we've got probably at least 4 more months of heat like this in Georgia, fluctuating between, 80 degrees and 110 degrees. So my hopes aren't too high, but, we're dealing with it. Another milestone that we hit this month is we paid off our car. So once we get to the loan amounts, the only loan amount that we paid was the last and final payment for our car. We purchased that car back in December of 2019 before we even got married, and it's totally paid off. and I'm very excited about that. We did pay more over a couple of payments, so we paid it off a little bit early, but I was still very excited just to get that done. So now our full focus can go on to paying off the undergrad student loans, and I'll have more information about that in my quarterly update that I'll be filming for quarter 2 of the year, which was April, May, and June, that will be coming out in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and look at our pie chart for the month of June in the year 2025. Little iced coffee break. I'm going to start at the top and move my way around. I have tried so many different ways in my head to make this work, and that's just the easiest thing so I don't skip over a category. Savings was 4.7% of our total amount of earning and expenses this month. Groceries was 4.2%. Eating out was 4.4%. I'm actually totally surprised by those numbers. And once you see like the actual number amount, you might be a little bit surprised too. Insurance was 6.1%. Rent and utilities was 29%. Gas was 1.3%. And right next to gas that I just skipped over is subscriptions. And you can barely see it. It's the darker blue amount, and that's 0.3% for subscriptions. 19.8% was travel, 9.6% loans, 0.5% for business expenses, and 20.1% for miscellaneous, which I'll explain that when we get there. If this happens to be one of your first times watching this, the reason that I show this pie chart, but then also go into the actual number that I budgeted and the number that I spent, is because I like looking at my money and at different aspects of my finances from multiple points of view. So with the miscellaneous, that doesn't surprise me at all, but I am surprised to see travel being less than that based on the fact that we had an unexpected trip come up this month. And then I kind of know how that happened, and I'll talk through that a little bit when we get to the travel amount. But to see the breakdown in just a different capacity versus just the numbers themselves really helps me to get a different perspective on my money, and that's why I want to include it in these budgeting videos. And I just use Google Sheets to create those charts. I put in all the different categories, all the different amounts for the categories, and then just have a pie chart created in Google Sheets for me. But to look at the actual amounts, the reason that groceries and eating out surprised me is because we've consistently been going over budget. So I tried to expand that budget a little bit to compensate for that and didn't end up needing it. Now, travel, again, is a little bit higher, and any groceries that we purchased specifically for our trip to the beach, I did put under travel, but we still wouldn't have gone over budget with that amount. And I'm really excited that we were so under budget for these two amounts. So let's get into the actual numbers. So for groceries, I budgeted $400 for the month of June, and we only spent $261.64, meaning that we had a balance or an underspend of that budget category of $138.36. Eating out, I budgeted $375 because holy cow, have we really been going over budget for eating out, primarily because of the heat. I just have zero desire to turn on the stove or the oven because it generates heat, and I don't need it to be any warmer in this apartment than it already naturally is. You know what I'm saying? But budgeted $375, spent $276.95, meaning that we underspent that category by $98.05, which I'm thrilled with. Rent and utilities, I budgeted $18.10.32. We spent exactly $18.10.32. Subscriptions, I budgeted $19.98. We spent $19.98. That is going to go down in July because we won't be paying for Disney Plus anymore. For gas, this was another surprising one. $200 is what we budgeted because I anticipated we would be driving a little bit more. But with our unexpected trip, we had some things that we had to cancel that we would have been driving more for. So we underspent by a long shot in this one. Budgeted 200, spent 84.22. So we underspent by $115.78. For travel, I generously budgeted $1,200. We spent $1,236.81, overspending that category by $36.81, which is wild considering we went to the beach. That's what that whole budget was for. We only ended up eating out twice, which was wild. We also didn't end up stopping to eat on the way down because we had leftover pizza and we just took it and put it in the cooler and ate cold leftover pizza on the way down for our lunch. So I was really, really, really surprised by the amount that we spent at the beach. Then we got a phone call while we were at the beach and my husband's grandfather passed away. And so we started making plans to get to the funeral, which was the next weekend after we got home. And I don't know if you've booked travel lately. Everything is so expensive. So booking travel 3 days out from needing to leave was outrageously expensive. Luckily, we were able to stay with his aunt and uncle who live close to the city where the funeral was going to be happening. So we were able to stay there for free. And because I had just upgraded us to a different credit card, the Capital One Venture card, I had $300 in credits to use through Capital One Travel, like booking travel through Capital One. So that's how I booked our flights. I booked our flights on Spirit. Never again. Literally never again. I haven't flown Spirit in like 15 years. We flew Spirit because it was the cheapest option. I think Delta flights were like $600 per person for basic economy, and we could not afford that right now. So we flew Spirit. I used the $300 travel credit to book that flight, so our out-of-pocket cost was $115.96. So in that respect, I'm very grateful that we didn't have to pay, the same amount as our travel budget just to get there. But the flight experience was horrible. Going there was kind of okay. I mean, the seats are cardboard at best and incredibly uncomfortable. The flight was very, very warm, but it was fine. The plane coming home was so old. I guess we were on a new plane going to Detroit, and then coming home, we were on a very old plane. The seats were horrific. There were bugs on the flight. I have never seen a bug on a plane before, but there were like bugs on the seats. Oh my God, it was awful. Anyways, all that to say, I used the $300 travel credit. That is not what I wish I was able to use that for, but for this, it was so handy because it made us feel very confident in being able to make this trip happen. And then we also got a rental car, and I used points from our credit card to fully pay that amount. So the only other cost that we had for the Michigan trip was like $330 for food and airport parking. That was a blessing to have the travel credit and the points to be able to pay for that and make that happen for that funeral. But overall, I'm totally shocked that we didn't spend way more than $1,200 in the travel category. For loans, like I said, the only thing that we did was pay off our car. So that was $601.21, which is exactly what we paid because we paid off our freaking car. Oh, that is such a relief. We got the title in the mail from the bank, and it was like, okay, all of our possessions are our own now. We are not indebted to anyone or any entity other than obviously the student loans, but that's not something that, is riding on us paying off. It's not physical. It's just looming. For insurance, budgeted $381.33. That's what we spent. Business expenses, I budgeted $30, spent $28.98. And for miscellaneous and personal, we're going to sit here for a second and talk about this. For miscellaneous and personal, we budgeted $750. We spent $1,255.54. Overspending that category by $505.54. Okay. I budgeted $750 because I had about $680 worth of things that I knew we would need to purchase or pay for in the month of June. So I gave us a little bit of a buffer, hoping that it would be enough. And then the realization of, even though my husband is going to take his BCBA certification exam in July, he has to pay the application fee and pay the exam fee in June. And I didn't budget that way. I had that slated for budgeting in July. So those things came up. And when I show you the breakdown of like red, yellow, and green light purchases, you'll see that under yellow. And then what else? We bought some more books. And I'm going to talk more about our spending on books specifically in my Q2 kind of seasonal update and reflection, because I was thinking about it earlier and I want to spend a little bit more time talking about that. But we had some other book purchases which accounted for some of our yellow light purchases. And then also some allergy medication for our pup that I thought would last a little bit longer than it did, and we needed to purchase it in June. So let's look at the breakdown. For green light purchases, we have $83.98, which was SPF, a phone case, and Pepcid heartburn pills. $281 to the vet for the dog to get his annual shots and annual checkup. $15.27 at Target for SodaStream flavors. $108.12 at Sephora because I did end up needing to buy my face wash, and I went ahead and picked up my Laneige lip mask because even though I still have a little bit of the Vaseline one, my lips were struggling after being at the beach, and I was ready to get back to my ultra moisturizing lip treatment. And so I went ahead and got that since I also needed to pick up my face wash. $44.41 at Target, which was for SPF, soap, parchment paper, and Brita filters. $28.14 at Target for deodorant refills. Instead of buying them at Saltaire, I purchased them through Target specifically because of the 5% discount, and I ordered like 4 of them because they were out of stock on the Saltaire website. So I'm set for a little while, but I definitely will go back to ordering it directly from the company once these are used up. $49 from Sam's for supplements that I'm taking, turmeric, fish oil, and then $33.32 for SodaStream refill CO2 canisters. So all of those things I knew that I needed to purchase and they were budgeted for. That's our green light. Then we go to our yellow light, which was not necessarily budgeted for in that month, but was either a necessary purchase or kind of a known purchase, like books that we kind of knew we would spend money on this year. We just didn't necessarily budget specifically for them in this month. $21.29 at Second and Charles, which is a used, and I think they have some new books as well, but we typically buy from the used section. $45.88 at Target for some books. If you watched my video that went up last week, that was my mid-year freakout book tag, I showed the quartet of the Ember and the Ashes series by Saba Tahir. I bought those at Target. I'm not going to make a habit of buying books at large box stores, but they were an unbeatable price. I haven't seen them literally anywhere else at like small bookstores. So yeah, I bought them at Target, and I don't regret it because I'm so glad I have them, but I do wish I could have found them at an independent bookstore or at a used bookstore. And could I have waited? Sure, but I didn't, okay? I didn't. And then I spent $54.03 at an independent bookstore. Essentially, it's called Two Blonde Readers, and they've converted a school bus into a bookstore, and they go and do pop-ups at different places around town. And so I was finally able to catch them at a place close to me, and I purchased 3 books from the book bus. Obviously, if you watched my video about my hoped for 2025 reading goals video, I mentioned like a $100 book budget. We've obviously blown that. Again, I want to talk more about the money that we're spending on books in the quarterly update, because I think it makes a lot of sense in my head and I'm not upset about it, and that's that. Then we had $245 for my husband's BCBA application, $15 for him to order his transcripts from the school he graduated from to submit with that application, $125 to sign up for his BCBA exam fee, which is happening in July. So that was a hefty amount that we weren't necessarily expecting this month. I was expecting it next month. So that really took us out of the budgeted amount. And then $35.02 for a dental cleaning bone for this guy right here and his allergy medicine, because he has been having a lot of eye problems related to allergies. Just popping in because I realized I did not talk about our red light purchases, of which there were 3 for the month of June. One was $29.06. That was at Goodwill for some shirts for Jonathan. I think maybe 1 book, and then I also bought a photo album for my sister. The second one was $26.48. That was at Old Navy. I wanted an additional pair of shorts because I really only have like 1 pair of shorts, and then I have 2 pairs of biker shorts. Anyways, I wanted 1 more option. So I got a couple different pairs from Old Navy and only ended up keeping 1 thing. It's a skirt actually, so it has like tighter shorts on underneath and then a skirt around it. And then when I went to return all of the things that I wasn't keeping from Old Navy, I found a dress that I really liked the shape of on my body, as well as the fabric it was made with. It was made 98% cotton, 2% spandex, and I'm trying to buy more natural fiber clothing when I purchase clothing. I did get that. So that plus the skirt, $26.48. And then finally another Goodwill purchase, which was $15.54. That was for some more shirts for Jonathan and 2 picture frames. The shirts for Jonathan, he realized that he is really liking short sleeve button-up shirts, and Goodwill is a great place to buy clothes for my husband because he changes what he likes quite often. So it's nice that they are cheaper, and it's really easy to find 100% cotton and 100% linen or a cotton linen blend at Goodwill for these type of shirts. So I think we're done with the shirt purchases for him now because he has amassed quite the collection. But that's what that was for. And then I got 2 picture frames that were just really, really pretty wood, solid wood, and I really liked the shape of them as well. So with that being said, our total budgeted amount for the month of June was $5,767.84. We spent $5,956.98, which was an overspend of the budgeted amount by $189.14, but we still saved $293.94. And we've also come to the end of a quarter, so I do have an update for our annual income to expenses amount so far for over or underspending, but that you'll have to wait for in the quarterly update. And typically I would throw this over to future Kaylee and she would talk you through budgeting for July, but instead we're just going to stay here together and go ahead and talk about July. Hold on, iced coffee break. So some July intentions are to find some ways to enjoy being outside, even in the heat. We want to go to our apartment complex pool more often, and I would like to go to the dog park a little bit more frequently as well, especially on the weekends in the earlier morning when it's not too hot, because he does really love that. So want to try and prioritize that since we are home for the majority of this month. Oh my gosh, there is like the smallest patch of sun where he likes to lay in the window, and he is as close to being like off the thing that he's laying on as possible to get his head fully in the sun. That's precious. I also hope we stay within our budget, or at least save, and I am hoping to see some changes either this month or next month in our overall income amount. I have picked up some more clients, and once my husband passes his BCBA exam, his income changes. I'm feeling really good going into July. I have a lot that I'm hopeful for and expectant for. I also have a lot of motivation right now to get some things done and to prepare for the fall, when I hope to have some exciting things launching for my business. So I just want to make sure that I am maximizing my time and using my time wisely so that I can prepare for those things. And even just looking at our calendar, even though we're home, we do have a lot going on. So this is the 30th, Monday. On Thursday the 3rd, my in-laws are coming to town. This was a planned trip before we all saw each other last week in Michigan. But they're going to be in town for a couple of days. We're going to go to an Atlanta Braves game on July 4th and do a couple of other things with them while they're here. We also are caretaking this coming weekend and a couple of other days this month, but less than normal because of Jonathan taking his BCBA exam and some camps and other trips that the family that we typically do caretaking for is going on. So just looking at the calendar, I know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 meals are going to be covered for Jonathan. And he is dog sitting some this month as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nights that he won't be home. And so I don't have to worry about a meal for both of us. And then we will be out of town for one night because his exam is up in Dahlonega, Georgia. And so we are going to go and spend the night up there the night before so that he's able to get as much rest as possible. I have already booked that hotel and I booked it with points, so it was totally free. But we will definitely go out to eat while we're in Dahlonega. And so I also need to think about a small travel budget for that and a couple of other things that I'll talk about when we get to that category. But that means that we have 17 nights that both of us need a meal, whether at home or eating out. So if I say that we're going to do 7, and then I'm going to budget $50 per meal-ish with a buffer. So I'm going to do $400 for eating out, meaning that we have 10 nights that we'll probably eat in, and then we need lunches and things like that. So I'm going to do $450 for groceries. Again, I'm trying to set ourselves up for success and not failure. And so even though we drastically underspent in both of the categories last month, we also were traveling quite a bit. So we did eat out and we did buy more groceries. They were just categorized under travel expenses. So I want to make sure that going into July, where we will be home for the majority of the month, I set ourselves up for success in specifically those two categories. Rent and utilities, I know exactly what we're going to spend because I already know those amounts. So it's $1,803.03 is what I'm budgeting. $16.99 for subscriptions because we're only paying from Spotify from now on. Gas, I'm going to budget $2.25 because Where my husband is dog sitting is a little bit further. My in-laws coming to town, we're going to be driving more, so I just want to make sure, again, we're set up for success in that category. So I'm going to budget $225. I am budgeting $500 for travel. That is going to be including $200 that we still owe my parents for the vacation rental from our vacation back in June. $75 for a gift card for the person who watched our dog. I completely forgot to grab that in the month of June, so I'm going to do that probably tomorrow and send that to her in the mail. And then that leaves $225 to spend on our little overnight trip to Dahlonega, both for food and for gas. It's probably more than enough, but I would rather be over prepared. And who knows, we might hit up a bookstore while we're there. And you bet your boots, I am going to be putting those purchases under our travel budget. Okay, for loans, I have budgeted $500. I would love to do more, but I think now that our car loan is gone and that was consistently $311.43, I'm going to try and bump it to $500 consistently on the undergrad student loan amount. Again, hopefully over time we pay more than that, but I think $500 is doable for next month. For insurance, I'm budgeting $381.33 because I know that that's exactly what we'll pay. For my business expenses, I'm budgeting exactly $28.98 because I know that that's exactly what I will spend. For miscellaneous and personal, I know that we need to purchase toothpaste, toilet paper, tissues. I need my face serum and cream refilled. I have used up all of my travel size amount this past month and my full size amounts so that I could get through the rest of the month, so that I could avoid making that purchase last month, which thank goodness, because we overspent in that category by so much. But I do need to purchase that. That's going to be like $90-ish. I have one makeup product that I think is going to run out, and so I'm just budgeting for it just in case. I also know that we need to pick up Advil. So I'm assuming those purchases are going to be $300. So I'm going to budget $450 to give a buffer and hope for the best. What I do love about this budget, it's been a minute since our monthly budget was under $5,000 for our total amount budgeted, and we are under $5,000. We're at $4,755.33. Just as a contrast, we were at 57, almost 58 the month before. In May, we were at 6,600. And so April was the last time it was under 5. In March, it was 69 nearly. In February, it was 56 almost. And in January, it was like 8,000 because that was when we paid for my husband's school. So I'm very excited to see that our total budget amount is under $5,000, just because I know that we will make more than that in the month of July, meaning that we can help close the gap between any overspending that we've done thus far this year and get our savings back up to a good spot, which then helps me feel more confident being more aggressive towards that undergrad student loan amount. And that is exciting for me. So this has been so long-winded because I did these back to back. I think I've spent less time overall though in doing this. So I don't know if I will do it this close again, because it is going to be a marathon of editing for my husband to get this out in the next couple of days so that it comes out towards the beginning of July. But I'm excited about July. I'm excited to continue spending some time in the sun. I have been getting so much reading done, and I hope that that continues this month. We've been eating really great food that I've been making here at home, even when we were on vacation, making there at the condo. So there's just a lot of good going on right now, even despite having attended a funeral. there's still so much good happening, and it has not felt that way in a while. And there are still really hard things and really stressful things. That still exists, but it's not the overwhelming feeling, if you get what I mean. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you were able to find some ways to add some intentionality into your finances and into your budgeting life if you choose to do that. And I am just grateful that I get to kind of share a real perspective on what finances look like for an average couple living in the States with 2 incomes and a dog and no kids. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, I would love for you to subscribe and come along this journey with me. That's it for me. Until next time.